All right, hey folks, it's Faz here from Faz Lifts. Today we're talking about progression, particularly double progression, what it is, why it's useful, and how it can help you. So before that, thanks for making it onto my channel. Please go ahead and comment and like on the video. And if you haven't done so already, go and hit the subscribe. And if you are a subscriber, it'd be cool if you hit the bell icon to enable you to get notifications for any new videos. All right, let's crack on with the video. So I thought this was a relatively basic question, but it's a necessary one from talking to people that it's worthwhile explaining just so people are clear on what double progression is. Now, essentially, we all know that to get bigger and stronger, we've got to add weight to the bar. However, how you do that still seems to be for some people like something which is a new concept, which is all right because we all start somewhere. So I wanted to take today's video just to look at a fairly basic concept about double progression. How do we actually progress? And for those of you who are old hands at the gym, perhaps you'll learn something as well or brush up on old knowledge. All right, so now generally, if people stop me at the gym or whatever and say, well, look, how do I get bigger? And I just tell them, look, add a little bit of weight to the bar, try and get a little bit stronger over the course of time. And so a light bulb goes on in the head and go, Faz said get stronger. And so next thing I know, they're jumping on the bench press and they've added like 20 kilos on, spotters helping them off with the bench, and it just becomes a mess. And it makes me realize, look, they don't actually know what's going on. Like, I'll give you an example of this. Somebody I know, she wanted to get stronger in squats, she wanted to build up her legs and her bum. And so she goes from squatting 40 kilos to good depth to then next week trying to go heavy, because her idea is now that, progressive overload, sticks 70 kilos on the bar and starts doing half reps and goes, yeah, I did 70, now I'm stronger. Now, for those of you guys who know what progressive overload actually is and what double progression is, you'll probably be laughing to yourself, but like, that is the kind of thing that people think. And she was a PT as well, so all the more worrying. But anyway, let's now go ahead and discuss what double progression is and give you guys sort of a bit of a background on the idea of adding more stress to your body over time to grow. So as usual, I've got some notes. I don't want to spend too much time talking on these, but I want to just give you my thoughts. So human beings, we adapt to any stress that's given to us, as long as we're given enough time to do so, all right? Now, the particular type of stress that we adapt to by growing more muscles is gym training, resistance training. So generally in that, 6 to 15 range, relatively high intensity, and all of these arguments we have about whether we should lift with higher intensities or higher volumes and all that kind of stuff, they are just the minutiae. The main thing is just get stronger. Like the little itty bitty details that everyone likes to jump into camps with actually don't make that much difference. As long as whether you do a bro split or whether you do a push pull legs or whatever, people get really sort of in camps about that and like get the pitchforks out and all that kind of stuff. Or whether you train with intensity or whether you train with volume, all that kind of business. Like, as long as you don't take an extreme position, yeah. Like, I've heard it all over the years. I've heard people saying that they're only going to lift, with about 6 sets per week, or others who say they're only going to lift with a body part once every month or something like that. I've heard people say that, or every 3 weeks. As long as you don't go to those extremes, you're probably going to be okay. And as long as you have one eye towards progression, you're probably okay. And that's what this is about. So the human body has various phases, which Hans Selye identified in the 30s with his general adaptation syndrome. He stated that any stress, when it's applied, the human body responds in 3 ways, for 3 stages. Firstly is the alarms phase. That's the stressor. After that, there is the resistance, and that's when you adapt to the stress. And if the stress keeps happening, you eventually get exhaustion. That is, if the stress is excessive, you get into overtraining. So examples of this would be, if you use your hands a lot, you get calluses. And that's an example of the resistance adaptation. Now, if you use your hands like way too much, then it goes past calluses and you might tear your calluses, you might rip your hands and you'll be in a worse state. But ideally, you just get in that middle ground of having calloused hands if you use your hands a lot. Or we have, say, catching a cold. You catch a cold, that's the alarm phase, and you develop a resistance to that cold. That is the resistance phase. Now, if the cold is so extreme, or let's say your body is impaired to the point where you can't actually adapt to it, then you would die off. So that is the exhaustion phase. Not good. So generally with training, we want to sit in the alarm and resistance phase. That's the idea. So we just see the stress and we adapt to it. So we don't want to be providing the body with any kind of stress that it can't accustom itself to, but we do want to provide it with nice, gradually increasing stress over the course of many weeks and months so we get bigger and stronger. So that's the general idea. Now, in terms of some specifics, so double progression is a way of incrementally increasing the stress on the muscle so that you can provide a relatively new stress, small increase of stress more than last time, which you can then create a further adaptation to, so you'll be able to cope with a higher degree of stress, again, another small increase next week. So this is one way of doing things. So this would be a warm-up. You might warm up with, so let's say your working sets are at 50 kilos. You might warm up with the bar at 20, then add 30, then add 40, and then do your working sets at 50. Set 1, 50 for 8, set 2, 50 for 7, set 3, 50 for 7, and set 4, 50 for 6. That is how you would warm up for those sets. Now, if we take a look at how this would work in terms of progression, let's say you got those 8, 7, 7, 6. That's great. Now, next week, you might well go up to 52.5 simply because you've actually hit 8 on the first set. So you would add a bit of weight on and go to 7, 6, 6, 5. Fantastic. Now, you didn't hit 8 on the first set. So that way you'll stick to the same weight. So you'll get 8, 8, 7, 6 next week. And so great, week 4, you can add some weight on. That's one way of doing things. The other way of doing things is you might want to just opt to hit 8 on all 4 sets. That's okay as well. That's another way of progression. Either way, it doesn't really matter. This way, you've probably got more intensity per set. In the other way, if you hit 8, 8, 8, 8, you're probably going to have maybe 1 or 2 sets which are quite easy, and the last couple of sets which are a bit harder. But either way, it doesn't matter. It's more about progression than it is about hanging your hat on either intensity or volume, you know, or whichever particular method. As long as you're progressing, it doesn't really matter. So nowadays, I prefer more of the hitting the top end of all the sets. So I might go for like a 12, 12, 12, 12 before I move on, rather than when I was younger, I might do something like this, which I would hit maybe 12 on the first set and then move on, just simply because it provides more work for me. Some of the work is at lesser intensity, lesser chance of injury, burnout, all that kind of stuff. So either way, what you want to do is just to make sure you're hitting the top range and then moving on next week with a small amount of weight. And that is double progression. Now, if we sort of take this and extrapolate it out further, what you really want to do is look at where you can be months down the line. And this is what I always tell people. Extrapolate where you might be months down the line. So let's say you're currently benching 80 kilos or like a plate and a half, you know, if you're in America, like 180 pounds or something like that. You're currently benching about 180, let's just say a plate and a half. Now, plate and a half for 10. Let's say you want to get to 2.5 plates for 10. That's a big, massive increase. That would take you from, you know, early intermediate to like a late stage intermediate, close to being advanced. Now, that's a good goal, but that's going to take you a long time. So there's no point in going to the gym next week and going shoving on 100 kilo on the bar and seeing what you can get. Do it this way. Extrapolate where you can be. Now, let's take a best case scenario. Let's say that you were to add something like, I don't know, 2.5 kilos or 5 pounds per month. You might be saying to me, Faz, that's crazy. 5 pounds per month, 2.5 kilos. That's rubbish. Why are you underachieving so much? Well, think about where you could be in 10 months' time. Okay, if that 5 pounds could be 50 pounds. Then let's say there's a bit of slippage. Let's say 50 pounds in a year. Well, where could you be in 2 years' time? Well, by the end of 2 years, that's it. You've done it. You've added 100 pounds on. Your plate and a half is now 2.5 plates for 10. And you've done it comfortably by only aiming for 5 pounds per week, 5 pounds per month. Sorry, not per week, per month. So that's kind of how you got to think about these things. Think about the difference in mentality of somebody who says, okay, I want to get stronger. So I've got a plan of where I can be in 10 months' time or a year's time or maybe 2 years' time, rather than the guy who says, okay, you know what? Baz said get stronger. So I'm going to go to the gym, come hell for leather. I'm going to force out the reps. I'm going to get my spotter, come over and force out some reps. I'm just going to force the weight up and see what happens. Look at the difference in mentality. Now, that first guy, he's probably not going to get a great deal from that, because it's going to be very difficult to quantify whether he's improving from week to week or not. Like, how do you measure 1 rep with 3 reps from the spotter, then a pec strain? Like, how do you measure that from week to week? Next week, you're going to get both pec strains and like 2 reps, and you know what? Like, it's just impossible. Whereas the guy who did 80 kilos and he got that for reps, and then next week he did 82.5, and then he solidified that for a few more weeks, and then next month he targeted 85. Except that rate of progression is very sustainable as long as your diet is in check. You could probably even do that with my approach of, you know, relatively recompositioning, blah, blah, blah. See my videos on that. And you could go and do a hell of a lot over this course of a couple of years to take you from that guy who's in the gym benching maybe just a plate and a half for a set of 10 to that guy who's in the gym benching 2.5 plates for a set of 10, which is phenomenal. That's a huge level of strength. So think about it in that way. Now, this is why double progression is so valuable. You can get better at the sets, get better at the reps. And another thing, you can pull yourself back a little bit and just get better at the quality of your sets and reps. So let's say you got your, I don't know, 82.5 for 8-8-8-8, but it was a little bit scrappy. But that's okay because you've still got a couple of weeks left of the month. So you know what, maybe just stick to that weight during that month and just get better at doing the reps. You don't always need to add weight to the bar either. You can just get better. So think about things from a long-term standpoint of where you want to be 10 months from now, not where you want to be a week from now or 2 weeks from now. Extrapolate it out. That's how I always used to think when I was younger, when I was first starting out. And that's probably why I made so much progress in those first couple of years, because I was really focused on how the weeks added up to the months and then the years. So within a couple of years, you know, I'd become pretty late stage intermediate. And within 3 to 4 years, I'd hit those big, you know, 3-plate bench, 4-plate squat, 5-plate deadlift numbers. It was just about targeting that extra 2.5 kilos every single month. And then over 10 months, that's 25 kilos. Over a couple of years, that's maybe 50 kilos if you're lucky. And if it's in the cards, that's a hell of a good rate of progression, all for just adding 5 pounds per month. And what is that? That's like £1 a week. 2.5 kilos per month. It's a minuscule amount of kilos per week. It's sustainable for most people. And that's kind of how I want you to think. So slow and steady weight gain progression allows us to maintain good form, a good strong mind muscle connection. Large weight increases almost always fail to bring about actual muscle size gains. Over time, this is how people get jacked. This is how you do it. Small progressive weight increases with the same form, same tempo, excellent technique, and all the things that I preach on in this channel. That's how you do it. The rush to get big and strong by adding a lot more weight than you're actually capable of doing and then compromising form, it's so pointless, but I see people do it a lot. Anyway, this video was really meant to detail double progression for those of you who aren't familiar with it. So give yourself a rep range, work up to the top of that rep range, add weight, however long that takes. If it takes a week, great. It might take 2 weeks, it might take 3 weeks, but either way, use that system. Also, as a final extra note, I should say, for exercises like, I don't know, curls, where your rate of progression might not be so fast, you may well need to have a higher range. So like, let's say, for example, curls and side laterals. Those are exercises where you typically don't add a great deal of weight on unless you're really compromising form. So you may want to have a wider range. So something like, I don't know, 8 to 20 reps. So on your laterals, once you can handle the weight for 20 clean reps, then maybe move up a dumbbell. And that might be a little more palatable than just sticking within a small range of 8 to 12. Go right up to 20, and then at least if you go up a dumbbell, you might feel really heavy, but at least you'll probably be able to get at 8 reps. You know, it's like less than half. It's a little bit easier when you're doing things like the bench press because of the size of the weight, because of how much weight you're using. A 2.5 kilo increase, so 1.25 a side or 2.5 pounds per side, is a lot more palatable to progress on. So you can use a tighter rep range. For the smaller exercises, use a wider rep range, and that'll give you a greater chance of success. So in summary, guys, there's nothing special about double progression. It just allows you, it just gives you a system whereby you work up to the top end of the sets and reps, and then you add some weight, taking you back down to the bottom again. And then once you've done that, you work way back up to the top end of the sets and reps with the new weight, and then you add some weight on, and you do the whole process again, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right over the course of the months. And the second thing is aim for the smallest increase possible and just extrapolate where you're going to be 10 years down the line. It's the same as saving money and investing. Like, yeah, you could just take your entire like check and, you know, forget about paying the bills and all that kind of stuff. Just chuck it all into the bank, go, yes, I've saved a hell of a lot this month. Yeah, but that's not sustainable, is it? Because you've got bills to pay, you've got food to buy. So, you know, you don't want to be living on fresh air and good intentions out on the street and your electricity company's cutting you off, all because you wanted to save money. So you add a little bit at a time to the bank account and let it compound. And then over the course of 10 years, 20 years, that's when you have a bigger amount. It's the same thing with lifting weights. All right. Right, folks, hopefully that was useful. That was supposed to be a sort of a very, very useful, practical video. If you have any questions about that, let me know down below. Otherwise, yes, if you'd like to work with me on your own goals, physique, strength, muscle gain, whatever, then there's a link in the description. Otherwise, I will call it there and see you guys next time. Take it easy.